One of the very
Yes,
important
yes.
considerations with intellectual disability is the severity of the disability. You might think that people with intellectual disability are all similar, but in fact there are big differences that have an impact upon their ability to learn as well as the support that they need. This is where the DSM-5 is very helpful, as it gives a functional description of the different levels of severity. The DSM-5 definition states that the level of severity is best understood by looking at the function of a person rather than by just looking at IQ scores. In fact, the classification discourages determining severity by reference to IQ. So instead of ending up with an IQ number, we get an idea of what the person can and cannot do, and more importantly, what we can do to support the child. The DSM looks at function in terms of the conceptual, social, and practical domains. So in this video, we're going to look at the 4 levels of intellectual disability in terms of severity. There's mild, moderate, severe, and then profound. And we're going to look at them with regard to the 3 domains. We're going to look at all the levels, but remember that in this course, we are focusing on severe to profound intellectual disability. But in order to be clear about this focus, it is good to understand all the other levels as well. Let's start with mild intellectual disability. In the conceptual domain, in very young children, there might be no obvious problems present. But when it comes to school-aged children, there are difficulties in learning, academic skills, and those involving reading, writing, arithmetic, time, or money. They might need curriculum adaptation. In adults, abstract thinking, short-term memory, and functional use of academic skills are reduced. So this results in a somewhat concrete way of thinking. As regards to the social functioning domain, communication, conversation, and language are more concrete or immature than expected for age. There may be difficulties in regulating their emotions and behaving in age-appropriate fashion. These difficulties are noticed by peers in social situations. There's also a limited understanding of risk in social situations, as social judgment is immature for their age. And the person is at risk of being manipulated by others.
Yeah.
From a practical functioning perspective, the individual may function age-appropriately in personal care, but may still need some support with complex daily living tasks in comparison to their peers. As an adult, support would include shopping, transportation, home, childcare organization, nutritious food preparation, banking, and money management. Recreational skills are the same as their peers, but judgment around well-being and organizing recreation time requires support. Employment is likely to be found in jobs that do not emphasize conceptual skills. Individuals generally need support to make healthcare decisions and legal decisions, and to learn to perform a skilled vocation competently. Let's move to moderate intellectual disability. Now here, from a conceptual functioning perspective, it is clear from the start, from an early age, that the individual's conceptual skills are well behind those of their peers. For preschoolers, their language and pre-academic skills develop slowly. And for school-aged children, progress in reading, writing, maths, and understanding of time and money develops more slowly across the school years, and the level achieved is limited compared with their peers, such that as adults, academic skills development is typically at a primary school level. Support is required for academic skills in work and personal life. Ongoing support for conceptual tasks will be required across the lifespan. In the social functioning domain, the individual relies more on the spoken word than the written word for communication. They are able to have close relationships and have romantic partners. However, they may not perceive or interpret social cues accurately. Social judgment and decision-making abilities are limited, and caregivers must assist the person with important life decisions. As regards practical functioning, the individual can do most activities of daily living if the time is taken to teach him or her to become independent, and reminders may be needed. He or she can do household chores, although an extended period of teaching might be needed, and ongoing supports will be needed for adult-level performance. Independent employment in jobs that require limited conceptual and communication skills can be achieved, but considerable support from co-workers and supervisors and others will be needed. In recreational skills, they usually require additional support and learning opportunities over an extended period of time. Challenging behavior might be present in a significant minority and cause social problems. So then let's move to what is severe intellectual disability. And here, if we look at the person within a conceptual functioning domain, we see that the individual generally has little understanding of written language or of concepts involving number, quantity, time, and money. So caregivers need to provide extensive supports for problem solving throughout the individual's life. Within a social functioning domain, spoken language is quite limited in terms of vocabulary and grammar. Speech may be single words or phrases and may be supplemented through augmentative means such as gestures, signs, or pictures. Speech and communication tend to be focused on the here and now within everyday events. Relationships with family members and familiar others are a great source of pleasure and help. Then in the practical domain, the individual requires support for all activities of daily living, including meals, dressing, bathing, and toileting. The individual requires supervision at all times and cannot make responsible decisions regarding their well-being of self without some support from others. In adulthood, participation in tasks at home, recreation, and work requires ongoing support and assistance, and learning new skills always involves long-term teaching and ongoing support. Some individuals at this level might show behaviors that are difficult to handle. When we come to profound intellectual disability, in the conceptual domain, the individual has very limited conceptual skills and is best able to deal with concrete objects rather than symbols such as pictures or words. He or she may use objects for specific purposes, for self-care, work, and recreation. They can learn skills such as matching and sorting based on physical characteristics. However, there's a high likelihood of additional motor or sensory impairments which make learning difficult. As concerns social functioning, the individual struggles with symbolic communication in speech or gesture. He or she might understand some simple instructions or gestures and expresses his or her own desires and emotions, largely through non-verbal, non-symbolic communication. The individual enjoys relationships with well-known family members, caregivers, and familiar others, and initiates and responds to social interactions through gestural and emotional cues. Additional sensory and physical impairments once again limit the amount and quality of social interaction, and extensive support might be needed to ensure that this interaction happens. Within the practical functioning domain, the individual is dependent on others for all aspects of daily physical care, health, and safety. He or she may or may not be able to participate in doing some of these activities. When the person does not have physical impairments, he or she can assist with simple chores around the home, such as putting dishes away. With support, it is possible to engage him or her in vocational tasks that depend on simple actions with objects, such as sticking on labels. Recreational activities may involve, for example, enjoyment in listening to music, watching movies, going out for walks, or water activities, or with the support of others. Additional physical and sensory impairments often limit the extent that the individual can participate in activities, and without support, they might spend a lot of time just watching others. These individuals might show difficult and disruptive behaviors in some cases. Now that we have looked at all these levels, I want to just point out that these levels of severity are not absolute. It might be that the child is more impaired in one domain than in another, or that they fall on the border between levels. It is also true that children at different levels might also have very similar needs. This is why we refer to this course as focusing on children with severe to profound intellectual disability, as we don't want to make a sharp divide between these levels. So you will see that the focus of this course is on the group with the highest levels of support needs, that is severe to profound. We are dealing with children and adults here who will never attain independence and who are in need of lifelong care. This means that we cannot consider their well-being without thinking about the well-being of their caregivers. And this is why we talk about circles of care and education. Just as the child will need support to flourish throughout their lives, so too do their caregivers need support. Circles around each other that allow the child to achieve the best quality of life and to reach their own full potential.